Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Second Book. The Letter of BELICENA VILLCA. 8th Day. In the period when the ritual of cold fire was not celebrated, the Tartusians hierophants allowed the pilgrims to reach the clear space of the sacred forest and contemplate the colossal effigy of Pyrene. There they could deposit the offerings and meditate if they were disposed to face the death of the test of the cold fire, or if they preferred the return to their illusory reality of their common life. By the moment the goddess could not harm them because her eyes were closed and no one was communicating her sign of death. But, even for this conviction, many remained frozen of fright before the revealed ancient countenance, and were no less those who escaped in that moment, or died of terror right there. That was due to that Menhir was placed there by the white Atlanteans demigods thousands of years before, but, in the days of the alliance with the Lydian, not existed anyone over the earth capable to emulate such feat, to translate through thousands of kilometers a giant stone, and deposit it in the middle of an extensive ashes forest, without deforesting the zone. It is understood then, that the pilgrims received the immediate impression that such terrible sculpture was made by the gods. But not only the Menhir was work of the gods, because the conformation of the countenance proceeded from the notable capacity to degrade the divine that exhibited the Lydian. Craftily, the Tartusians were always worried to inform about the origin of the disquieting sculpture. Who achieved to recover from the first impression, and became aware in the details of the extraordinary countenance, had to appeal to all his forces to not be won, earlier or later, by the panic. Remember, Doctor, that, for their worshippers, what they had in front was not just a mere representation of an inert stone, but the alive image of the goddess. Pyrene was manifested in the countenance, and the countenance participated of her. And was that erratic countenance what stole the breath? Probably, if someone would have achieved, with a powerful abstraction act, to separate the face from the head of the goddess, would have found it of beautiful traits. In first place, and although of the green coloration of the stone, due to the form of the traits it undoubtedly belonged to the white race. In the next order, would need to be recognized in the general countenance an archetypal Indo-Germanic beauty, though directly Aryan. The oval of the visage rectangular, broad forehead, thick eyebrows, horizontal and slightly curved. The eyelids, as we already said that the eyes remained closed, demonstrated by their expression. A frontal gaze, of orbed, and perfect eyes. The nose straight and proportionate. Strong and prominent chin. Strong and thin neck. The mouth, with the lower lid thicker and a little more protrusive than the upper, was perchance the most beautiful note. Was lightly opened and curved in an scarcely outlined smile, in an unequivocal gesture of cosmic irony. Naturally, no one without the needed capacity of abstraction would be aware of these signalized traits. On the contrary, undoubtedly all his attention would be absorbed immediately by the hair of goddess. And this primary observation surely would neutralize the aforementioned aesthetic appreciation when contemplating the head on its conjunction, hair and face. The goddess presented that frightening aspect which produced panic in the rude pilgrims. But what was in her hair able to paralyze those rude pilgrims, normally habituated to danger? Serpents. Serpents of exceptional realism. Her hair was composed by 18 serpents of stone. 8, of different length, fell on both sides of the face, and other 2, much smaller, were curly on her forehead. Each pair of 8 serpents were at the same height. 2 in the height of the eyes, 2 in the nose, 2 in the mouth and 2 in the chin. Emerging from the previous level of hair, the other 8 serpentines returned and situated their heads within the anterior. And each serpent, when separating from the other 4 logs, formed in the air with its body 2 opposed curves, as an S, which permitted to announce the next movement, the mortal attack. And the 2 serpents of the forehead, although smaller, also evidenced identical aggressive attitude. In sum, when the countenance of the smiling goddess was admired friendways, emerged with strength the arch of the 18 serpent heads of her hair, and all the heads were forward turned, accompanying with her eyes the gaze without eyes of the goddess. and all the heads had the jaw horribly opened, exposing the mortal fangs and abysmal throats. Therefore, must not surprise, that such impressive apparition of the goddess terrified her most loyal worshippers. Logically, such composition had an esoteric meaning that only the hierophants or initiates knew, although, eventually, they disposed of an acceptable exoteric explanation. In this last case, they notified to the traveler, who sometimes could be an allied king or an important ambassador to whom the knowledge could not be totally denied, that the 18 serpents represented the letters of the Tartessian alphabet, which they pretended to have received from the goddess. During the ritual, the initiates affirmed to hear the serpents of the goddess reciting the sacred alphabet. The esoteric truth behind all this was that the 18 letters really corresponded to the 18 runes of Neptune, and that with them could be understood the sign of the origin, and with this the serpent, highest symbol of the human knowledge. But such truth was scarcely intuited by the Tartessians hierophants, due to in that days no one saw the sign of the origin, neither remembered the runes of Neptune. When incorporating the reform of the cold fire, the lords of Tharsis had received the word of the goddess that the house of Tharsis, offspring of the white Atlantans, would not be extinguished, while the lost wisdom would be recovered by one of their members, and to comply her word, lest than ever they should detach from the wise sword. That moment not reached yet, and no descendant of the house of Tharsis understood the depth meaning of the esoteric truth that revealed the stone head of Pyrene. So for them was also an unquestionable truth the fact that the 18 serpents represented the letters of the Tartessian alphabet. The 2 smaller serpents, for example, corresponded to the 2 letters included by the Lydian, and its pronunciation remained in secret. The same for the name of the goddess Moon, composed by the 3 vowels of the Iberians. In this case, the 2 vowels permitted to know the name that goddess Pyrene gave to herself when she manifested as cold fire in the hearts of men, that is to say, I am, something like, Ori. Every year, when the winter solstice was coming, the hierophants determined the nearest full moon, and, in that night, was celebrated in Tartessos the ritual of the cold fire. Would not be many the chosen ones who, finally, would dare to defy that test of the cold fire. In almost all the cases a group that could be counted with the hand fingers. The Menhir was aligned towards the west of the apple tree of Tharsis, in such way that the goddess Moon would invariably appear behind the tree and would transit through the sky until reach the zenith, place from where would totally illuminate the countenance of the goddess and, behind, the apple tree of Tharsis. When the brighter countenance of the goddess Moon was placed over the sacred forest, the chosen ones remained in silence, with the legs crossed and expressing with hands the mantra of the cold fire. In that moment only was permitted to chew willow's leaves. Apart of this, they had to remain in rigorous quietude. Until the zenith of the full moon, the dramatic tension grew instant by instant and, in that point, reached such intensity that the terror of the chosen ones seemed to extend through the environment and turned breathable. Not only the terror was breathable, but it was epidermal perceived, as though some dreadful presence had sprouted from the rays of the moon and had oppressed with a cold and startling embrace. Invariably was reached the climax at the beginning of the ritual. Then a hierophant moved to the back part of the stone head and ascended through a little stair which was carved in the rock of the Menhir, and then placed in the interior of it. The stair, which counted 18 steps and ended in a circular platform, allowed the access to a frustum platform. This was a narrow precinct of 1 or 2 meters of elevation, excavated exactly behind the face and scarcely illuminated from the floor by the perennial lamp. Over the floor platform, in fact, existed a tiny stove made of stone in which furnace was placed, since the Lydian improved the form of the cult, the perennial lamp, and slab permitted to cover the upper part of the stove and moderately exiguous light way out. Now this light was minimum, due to, the hierophant was prepared to realize a crucial operation of the ritual, to effectuate the aperture of the eyes of the goddess. To make it they just had to displace inwards both pieces of stone, connected each other, which usually remained perfectly assembled in the face and produced the illusion that some stony eyelids covered the bulb of the eyes. Those heavy pieces required the strength of 2 men to be placed in that position, but, once there, was enough to release the tether and they slided over a ramp that occupied all the interior area. This scene must be imagined. The ashes fence, ash tree, of the sacred forest forming a clear space, and on its center, huge and imposing, the apple tree of Tharsis, and the statue of goddess Pyrene. And before the goddess countenance, in a position which exalts even more the colossal size and the disturbing serpentine hair, the chosen ones, with a fixed gaze and anxious heart, awaiting her manifestation, the personal call the doors of the test of the cold fire. From above, Goddess O spills silver flashes of light over the square. Suddenly, coming from a near forest, a group of beautiful dancers interpose between the chosen ones and Goddess Pyrene. With the body naked of clothing and only with ornamental objects, bracelets and rings in hands and foots, necklaces and color belts, large pendant rings, bands in the forehead, which let the hair fall freely. They came jumping at the rhythm of a syrinx and never stopped in any moment, but they immediately started a frenetic dance. Previously, they had practiced the ritual libation of an aphrodisiac nectar, and due to this their eyes are brilliant of desire and their gestures insinuating and lascivious. The hips and bellies never stops to move and can be seen, at every moment, in 1,000 different positions. Firm breasts shacked as the flight of pigeons, and wet mouths are longing opened. All the dance is an irresistible temptation to the pleasures of the carnal love. Of course, the displayed erotism, by the dancers had by objective to sexually excite the chosen ones, turning in them the warm fire of the animal passion. Such dance was a vestige of the ancient cult of fire, and its culmination in other periods would have ended in an unbridled orgy. But the reform of the cold fire had changed things, and now was forbidden the ritual intercourse, and was demanded, instead, that the chosen ones experienced the warm fire in the heart. If any chosen one lacked of forces to refuse the treat of the dancers, he could join them and enjoy never imagined delight, but this would have not saved him of the death, because he would be murdered later for his weakness. The demanded behavior to the chosen ones required to remain immutable until the conclusion of the dance, maintaining the gaze-fixing countenance of the goddess. Let's go back to the scene. The volume of the music went increasing, and now is a choir of flutes and drums accompanying the cadence movements. The dancers pant, the dance becomes febrile, and the erotic expression arrives to its apogee. Behind them, the smile of the goddess seems more ironic than ever. The chosen ones are concentrated in Pyrene, but they can't avoid to perceive how among the mists of a dream, to the dancing feminine beauties who intoxicated them with passion, who dragged them to an inevitably worn and suffocating abyss. Is then when it becomes necessary the intervention of the goddess, when the chosen ones, with the will elevated, request in their hearts the fulfillment of her promise. And is in that moment when, at a signal of the Hierophants, the music stopped abruptly, the dancers moved aside quickly, and the eyes of the goddess opened, to see her chosen ones. As a whiplash, a horror shudder affected the chosen ones. The eyes' lips had disappeared, and the goddess contemplates them from the empty basins, with the form of the apple tree leaf of her eyes. The test of the cold fire had begun. A hierophant, with thunderous voice, recites the ritual formula. O Pyrene, goddess of smiling death, whose abode is beyond the stars, come us nearer to the chosen ones, who claim to thee. O Pyrene, ere once lovedest thy chosen ones, with the warm fire, and then now killedst them, rememberest thy promise. Killedst them first, with the cold fire, lovest them later, in thine abode. O Pyrene, bringest death to the warm liveliness. Let us meet Caliber, the cold death of thy gaze. And let us live in the death of thy cold life. O Pyrene, thou once gavest us, the seed of the cereal, to sow it in the groove of infamy, killedst that created life, and putest into the heart of thy chosen ones, the jellied seed of the stone that speaketh. O Pyrene, white goddess, sharest us the naked truth, by Caliber in thy gaze, and we will be not men but gods. Of a heart of a frozen stone. Caliber, thy chosen ones claim to thee. Caliber, thy chosen ones love thee. Caliber, death released. Caliber, seed of frozen stone. Caliber, naked truth remembered. All occurs quickly, as if time had stopped. The warm fire of the animal passion becomes terror again. But now is a terror with no limits what overcomes, a terror which is death itself, the death caliber of Pyrene, the needed death that precedes the naked truth. The chosen ones are paralyzed in terror and with the heart frozen of fright. They contemplate absorbed the countenance of Pyrene, while still resonates in the air the last caliber of the Hierophant. The eyes of the goddess see now the doors of another world. A world of infinite blackness. A world of essential cold which is the death of the warm life. Can't be traversed those doors without dying of terror. But if something overpass, such thing lives in the death. And if something survives to the caliber death, is due to, such thing consists also in the essence of the cold of the infinite blackness. The caliber death fascinates and attracts towards a naught which will be the matrix of the own self. The chosen ones precipitate with no doubts into the infinite blackness of the eyes of the goddess. But before traversing the doors of the death they reach to perceive, in an instant of supreme terror, that the sacred forest has transfigured and overflows of manifested life, of a life that remained occult behind the illusion of the vivid existence, of a life which in that moment obscenely gushed from all things as a demonic orgasm of nature. And they saw also how the apple tree of Tharsis, animated by a demental intelligence, shuddered in a diabolic laugh. And they saw the head of the goddess, also vitalized, shining from a blinding white light that accentuated even more the infinite blackness of her eyes. And when entering into the infinite blackness, when the heart was frozen and the warm life died, they saw at last the hair of Pyrene, boiling in serpents. And they heard the serpents whistling the letters of the sacred alphabet and pronouncing with them uninterruptedly, the names of all the created things. Was finally discovered, although useless for them, the highest knowledge permitted to the animal men, the content of the symbol of the serpent. But such knowledge was not of the interest of the chosen ones anymore. Something of it has traversed the barriers of the caliber death, something that is not scared of the death, and has found himself with naked truth which is himself. Because the infinite blackness that offers the caliber death of goddess Pyrene, where every created light turns off inevitably, is capable to reflect the thing, which is the uncreated spirit. And the reflect of the spirit in the infinite blackness of the caliber death is the naked truth of oneself. In front of the infinite blackness the created life died of terror and the spirit finds itself. For this reason if the chosen one, after the reunion, recovers the life, will be carrier of a signal of death that will leave his heart frozen forever. The soul could not avoid being subjugated by the seed of stone of oneself which grows and develops on it and transmutes the chosen one into a Hyperborean initiate, a man of stone. The resurrected chosen one will have a heart of ice and will exhibit an absolute courage. Will love the flesh woman, but she will not achieve to turn on in his heart the warm fire of the animal passion. So, he will seek in the woman of flesh, the one who be able to reveal, in her infinite blackness, the naked truth of himself. To her, the caliber woman, he will love with the cold fire of the Hyperborean race. And the caliber woman will respond with the cold, alive, of the caliber death, of Pyrene.